I would certainly recommend to do some accounting. So I like to start my retrospectives with a small board where we store all the action items that we wanted to tackle over the course of time. And basically, I ask for an update from the team members who volunteer to do that. That certainly is a valuable way of visualizing the progress the team is making and making sure that it understands, okay, this is not just for fun, but this is intended to be real change. And as far as visualization is concerned, our course would also put one item on the sprint backlog if you're practicing Scrum. So make sure it's visible the whole sprint that you're actually working on that.
Pick fewer and smaller action items. So if you typically come out with 10, pick 3. If 3 don't get done, pick 1 and make sure everyone is focused on getting that done within a few days after the retrospective. If you get that on a regular basis, then you can try 2 or you can try 3, but don't add a bunch until you know you can get all your action items done before the next time you retro.
I can tell by your questions that you've had a lot of these things happen for. So for teams that struggle to follow through on their action items, I try to think, what would it take to make the action item compelling? Are they actually just picking one, or do they believe in it? So I make sure not to assign action items. I ask for the whole team to raise their hand and agree it is an action they want to take on and that it is worthwhile taking on before they actually say they're going to do it. If there seems to be doubt, I ask what's standing in their way from accomplishing this in the next sprint or from it seeming to be valuable. And then you'll often get the people who haven't spoken up yet and kind of agreed to go along with it, who all of a sudden realize they better speak up. And then let's say we get past those, then I ask for one person to commit to having that happen in the next sprint, even if the whole team is actually responsible for it. To take that one step further, I have some teams who decide to add that on their boards just so they can track it, and some teams decide to track it in different ways. But those really seem to make a big difference, and especially when you ask every individual person to raise their hand and really own that it's worthwhile taking on.
Yeah, so peer pressure is really the key thing you're leveraging there, and you can't do it explicitly, but if you have a list of action items and you make it part of your retro to go over the action items at the end or the beginning of the next retro, then you're like, oh yeah, I made progress on that. You know, this is this, or we made progress. This subgroup made progress on this, and other folks did not make progress on it. The other thing is to make sure people don't bite off more than they can chew. I mean, so you coach people to say, okay, we've got 5 or 6 ideas of things we could do. We're not going to be able to do all of them. Let's pick one and let's do that one first. And so, you know, reach a level of culture change for one is going to give you much better impact than just scratching a surface of 5. So let's go deep on one rather than spread to 5 is sort of the message.
Well, that's kind of a thing, whatever a team does for making anything happening. So if it's a Scrum team, they just have to put it in their sprint backlog and follow it through as everything else. Because as soon as it's something different and sitting somewhere else, then people keep ignoring it. But if it's scheduled in and planned as everything else, and if it's more like a reminder, then it has to be part of like a daily stand-up. So it's really a reminder of every day. And so more or less like in the same way as to complete any other kind of task. And that's also for actions from the retrospective. Yeah.
Well, in the early days, before there were so many tools that teams kept track of things, and we were using more task boards, which I still think are extraordinarily useful. I would always recommend that at the end of the retrospective, when people had identified their action item, that they actually would write it on a card and take it into their planning meeting. So it's 2 different meetings, the retrospective meeting and the planning meeting, but the actions from the retrospective need to go right into planning. They need to be considered as a part of the team's whole work. And so sometimes that means I have to have some conversations with the product owner, product manager, scrum master about the fact that, you know, this is a meeting to help the team improve, and improvement will benefit them and their desired outcomes as well. So they need to give the team space for improvement during the iteration in the sprint.
There are two recommendations that I'd make. The first one is to make sure that the person who is assigned to an action item is actually not assigned to the action item. It should be bottom-up, volunteer-based. So if you come up with an action item that the team's going to work on, don't say, hey, you, Bob, you're the one who's going to work on that, but instead ask who wants to volunteer to be the ambassador of this action item for the upcoming sprint. If no one volunteers, that probably means that it won't get done anyway, and just move on to the next one. If someone volunteers, then that person is then that much more committed to ensuring the follow through. So that's the first recommendation. The second one is to visualize what you're doing. So if you don't write down your action item and then figure out a way to visualize your progress, it's much less likely you're going to follow through on your commitments. Tangible example of that, if your action item is, let's talk to the product owner twice a day. You can visualize that by hanging a poster board around your room and having a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday slot in the poster board, and just do a hash mark every time you talk with the product owner. And then you can visualize, you can see your progress throughout the sprint. So have action item ambassadors and visualize your progress.